Hello, and thanks for joining me. My guest today is Margaret Cullen, a licensed psychotherapist, a long-time meditation teacher, and one of the early certified teachers in Jon Kabat-Zinn's mindfulness-based stress reduction program. Margaret has spent more than 40 years exploring meditation and compassion practices. She helped develop compassion cultivation training at the Stanford School of Medicine alongside Thupten Jimpa, and she teaches mindfulness and compassion programs in healthcare, universities, and community settings. She's also a fellow of the Mind and Life Institute and an advisor to the Global Compassion Coalition. Her new book is Quiet Strength: Finding Calm, Clarity, and Resilience in a Turbulent World. In it, she explores equanimity across many spiritual traditions and how this quality of steady inner balance can support us in daily life. Margaret, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad you're here. I wanted to start off with equanimity itself. You describe beginning your exploration of equanimity by speaking with teachers and scholars from many spiritual traditions, including Judaism, Christianity, Islam, indigenous wisdom, and others. For listeners who may be new to these ideas, how would you describe what equanimity really is and how it coexists with mindfulness?
Thank you. Two very important questions, very big questions. So I'll do my best to synthesize them down into something digestible.
Thank you.
So equanimity is a virtue that, as you mentioned, and I discovered in researching my book, has been prized across all major wisdom traditions, really throughout modern history. And it refers to the ability to meet the full range of life experience without adding the drama of reactivity. So one of the big confusions that people have about equanimity is that it means being calm all the time. And equanimity actually points to something subtler than being calm. It points to our relationship to how we're feeling, not how we're feeling per se. So we can feel every feeling that's possible within the human experience, from rage to excitement and joy and delight and despair, without adding the extra drama or even melodrama that comes from attachment and aversion and how we relate to those feelings. And that spaciousness is equanimity. And in terms of how it relates to mindfulness, they are very, very closely related. And the way mindfulness is typically taught in the West, how I learned it through the insight meditation practices, equanimity is embedded in the training of mindfulness, actually. So in mindfulness training, like the mindfulness-based interventions, like mindfulness-based stress reduction, the things people are more familiar with, the way mindfulness is taught is awareness of the object. Usually you start with the breath. And the mindfulness piece is being aware and remembering to come back. The equanimity piece is how we relate to our experience. So that spaciousness, what Jon Kabat-Zinn calls, non-judgmental awareness, other teachers call it loving awareness. The quality of the awareness is equanimity, non-judging.
Right. Why do you think so many spiritual traditions point toward this quality of inner steadiness?
Yes, well, I think there are several reasons why. Um, but I would say without this steadiness, we are vulnerable to all the pushes and pulls of life. And this steadiness points to our inner agency to meet life fully without being pushed about by it. And I would say beyond that, if we are to respond effectively, engage effectively in anything that we're doing, we need the capacity to see clearly. Without equanimity, we're caught. And when we're caught in that stickiness, liking, not liking, reacting mode, we're not seeing clearly. And when we don't see clearly, we can't respond effectively. So that was understood, I think, across all traditions. In some ways, it's fundamentally a lot about wisdom.
Yeah. It almost seems like equanimity kind of got lost along the way through mindfulness. And I wonder how that happened.
I do too. I, I have some theories about it, but certainly was one of the reasons why I wanted to write this book, because I had been a student of meditation. I teach, but I'm still a student and will always be a student and have been for 45 years. And I didn't get a lot of equanimity training. It was talked about, but not a lot, and very little has been written about it. So I think number one, it's not very sexy. You know, other virtues like compassion and loving kindness, they're juicier. You
Yeah.
know, equanimity seems kind of vague and kind of dull. Number two, it's confusing for people. What is it exactly? People don't really understand the word. They haven't been exposed to it. The word seems a little old-fashioned, and certainly if you use it as an adjective, she's very equanimous. It sounds pretentious, and people don't use that language.
Yeah.
Um, so I think there are several reasons, and certainly in the Buddhist tradition, which I'm most familiar with, and that's the tradition that has really highly articulated what equanimity is. You know, there's a lot in all the suttas and all the texts, the Buddhist texts. Equanimity figures prominently. But one of the confusions there is that it has so many facets in Buddhism, it's a little hard to pin down. It's seen in many different places, and it overlaps like with mindfulness and lots of other qualities. So all of those together are, I don't know, my theories.
Yeah. So if you were to tell the audience one thing about how to pin equanimity down, what would it be?
Yes, that's a question I have to feel more comfortable with, I think.
Yeah. I guess
Because,
I mean like distilling it into something that's really easy to grasp. Like
yes. Well, I think the easiest way to distill it down is to say that it is a spaciousness, a way to feel all of life without being caught by it, without adding the additional suffering of our reactivity. That is equanimity.
that's good. That makes sense.
Okay, good.
You also reference Jill Bolt Taylor's observation that the physical surge of an emotion may last about 90 seconds unless our thoughts keep renewing it. How does equanimity help us ride that emotional wave feeling our emotions fully without feeding them or getting stuck in them?
That's such a great and very, very important question. And I spent a number of years working with Paul Ekman, an emotion theorist, on a big study out of UCSF. And I looked very deeply, this was before I wrote the book on equanimity, about mindfulness and emotion and their relationship. So there are several ways that equanimity can help us ride the waves of emotion. Um, some of them are as simple and accessible as cognitive perspective taking and remembering some basic truths about the nature of reality and the nature of emotion. So hearing someone that we respect, like Jill Bolte Taylor, who, is quite renowned not only for her scientific work, but for her personal experience of going through that stroke and writing about it. Um, so if she tells us that emotions arise and pass when we don't interfere with them, no matter how intense they are, then that awareness alone, we can remember that and say, okay, this is impermanent. If I don't interfere with this emotion, it will pass. And of course, this is a platitude. All our mothers told us this too shall pass. And
Exactly.
so we know it, right? Intellectually, but in the lived moment, it's easy to forget it.
Yeah, and I think it's really important how you brought up that you can get stuck in that emotion and to kind of replay it over and over and over again, and having that 90 seconds stretch into something that's lasts a really long time, and sometimes can last for some people for forever, just getting stuck in something that happened and then replaying the tapes and not being able to recognize that it's something that can just be stopped immediately.
Yes. So you brought up some very important points there. And I know you're talking in general about sleep. And so the interesting thing about not being fully present with your emotions is that this perpetuation of emotion can happen both by getting attached to them, but also by suppressing them. And we all know that, we go along fine during the day and then we wake up at 3 in the morning and we can't sleep, and boom, there's that feeling that I was avoiding, right?
Yep.
So suppressing is it's the flip side of the same coin, aversion, attachment, and interestingly, even spacing out. So these days we have all sorts of ways to space out. Like, this moment is boring. I'm going to get on TikTok or Insta or whatever I'm going to do. I'm going to scroll somewhere. That's another way of not being with feelings. It's the
Yes.
subtle way, and we tend not to pay attention to it. But they all count in terms of leaving a footprint where the emotion isn't simply felt and moves on to the next thing. Something gets caught. And, I'm sure most of your listeners know Bessel van der Kolk's famous book, The Body Keeps the Score. It's been on the bestseller list for, I don't know, years, I think, at this point. Um, that's the point, really. When emotions aren't fully felt, they persist in some way or other. Whether it's held in the nervous system, the skeleton, your heart, your psyche, somewhere.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you have mindfulness, and then you have equanimity. And the mindfulness, I guess, is the part where you're in your body, you're aware of things. And the equanimity part is recognizing the emotion that you're getting caught on, and then distancing yourself from that emotion or feeling.
There's the rub. You're not exactly distancing yourself. This is subtle, so bear with me a little bit. From the feeling as much as you are from the reaction to the feeling. And in a sense, you're not even distancing yourself, you're recognizing.
Recognizing.
There's a recognition, clinging, aversion. And rather than the clinging or the aversion, okay, let me just feel this. Let me just ride the wave of this anger. And the moment we stop clinging or aversion, space opens. We don't have to make it open. It just happens. It happens automatically. So that, again, is, in a sense, it's more of an attitudinal shift rather than an instrumental. Like the danger, I would say, is that people get instrumental. Okay, I'm going to look at you so you go away. And it's subtle, but it doesn't work. Okay, I'm going to pay attention to you and then you'll go away. But that ends up reinforcing this subtle aversion. I really don't like this feeling. I want you to go away. So I'm going to look at you to make you go away. That's different from, okay, this is what's here now. I notice this. Oh, it's uncomfortable. Wow, this anger. Oh, it feels like a fire. Oh, I hate it. Noticing that. I hate it. Can we track those things with a kind of a spaciousness, a non-judgment? This is part of the human experience. Can I be with this? And yes, the cognitive or the conceptual clarity that I discussed earlier is remembering this too shall pass, to give me the courage, right, to stay with the discomfort, if that's what's arising, and to help me kind of establish more spaciousness around the experience. So the danger with the reactivity is that we contract around it. We get tight, and that's part of what keeps it locked in. And these are all metaphors, right?
Yes, right. That's good. And then you talk in the book about feeling tones, and feeling. It's kind of what we were talking about, feeling the tone and feeling it before it blows up into a full-scale mental soap opera drama. And I was wondering, could you give people a simple way of how they might notice this in their everyday lives, the feeling tone?
Yes. So feeling tones are another very powerful doorway into equanimity, and they arise with every single experience we have. So every moment of consciousness has a feeling tone associated with it. And it's simple. There are only three choices: pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And of course, there are a lot of flavors of each of those categories. They can be, and intensities of each of those categories, but they boil down to three. And the feeling tones are what give rise to the reactivity. If it's pleasant, I hold on. If it's unpleasant, I push it away. If it's neutral, I space out. I scroll. I get on TikTok, whatever I do. Not interested. So noticing feeling tones interrupts reactivity. So something arises, let's say my daughter, who's an adult now, but we can still have our moments, it says something to me that, triggers me in some way, and it hits some old pattern of behavior we have. So I can pause for a moment and notice pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. Oh, unpleasant. The moment I notice unpleasant, I'm no longer hooked. Just that simple. So I'm already creating space around my reaction. And with family members, especially, these patterns are so conditioned that our responses can be very, very quick, and our reactions are higher because of just all the repetition of that and the history,
Yes.
So we're responding not just to this comment in this moment, but to many, many, many prior moments. So if I have the wherewithal to say, ooh, ow, unpleasant, that's all, that's it. That's noticing feeling tones. And then just see what happens. See what happens to the anger. So for example, so in that moment, I might feel, how might I feel? I might feel, I might feel angry. I might feel a little hurt by the comment. I might feel worried by the comment. Paul Ekman talks about the refractory period when we're in the peak of an emotion, when we're really, really caught. If we notice pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, that peak, Jill Bolte Taylor says 90 seconds. The moment we notice pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, we're no longer in the grips of the emotion.
Right. So you're able to kind of disengage in a way.
I think you're able to allow the emotion to do its normal thing, which is to move really quickly. So in a sense, it's not quite disengaging. It's really more not interfering, I would say.
Neutralizing?
No, not perpetuating.
Not perpetuating.
Not perpetuating.
That's good.
So neutralizing has a little more, and, this may not be helpful. I'm kind of really into semantics, but neutralizing has a little more, to me, a little of the tone of, I don't like you. I'm going to neutralize you. I'm going to get rid of you, and it kind of is a slippery slope again into that instrumental kind of, I'm going to use this in order to get rid of you. So again, I think the intention needs to be really, it plays a very important role here. Really what we're trying to do is what Dan Siegel has beautifully called increase our window of tolerance. So we're able to tolerate a greater and greater range of what it means to be alive.
Yes.
We're not trying to manage it. We're trying to increase our tolerance that we can live like all the notes in the symphony of being a human being.
That's very good. I like that. All the notes.
Yeah.
So many of us were raised to suppress our emotions in order to appear strong. How do you see equanimity supporting a more emotionally honest yet steady inner life?
Well, that's just another really beautiful question. Thank you. Suppression doesn't work. Suppression keeps us off balance. Suppression of emotion, there's a lot of data about this. There's tons of data in the literature, and I had the pleasure of speaking with Iris Mouse, a lead emotion researcher at Berkeley right now, who's done some beautiful research on the psychological consequences of emotion regulation and emotion suppression. So eventually we become basically dysfunctional by suppressing our emotions. It's not a strategy that works, and it is a strategy that many of us were taught in our families of origin. we weren't given another option, really. It was kind of act out or suppress. Um, so um, suppression has a cost. It has a cost psychologically, it has a cost physically, has a cost emotionally. Um, Equanimity allows us to move freely from this moment to the next with no footprint, no residue in the body, in the heart, in the mind. Um, so it creates a tremendous potential to be fully present, fully engaged, to see clearly, and it's kind of like your question was about balance, I think, if I heard you right. It's kind of like walking, we lose balance with every step and we regain it with the next step. So if we keep suppressing emotions, we're going to become very, very wobbly. We're going to become stiff, not resilient, not flexible, not able to take the next step fully, plant our feet on the ground, be balanced in the next step, because we're constantly being pushed off balance, constantly.
Yeah.
So the question is, how do we regain it the quickest? And that, in a way, is the definition of resilience as well as equanimity. It's kind of about recovery time, and that naturally, big feelings are going to come and we're going to be kind of pushed about. But how long do we stay? What's the residue? What's the consequence? What's the imprint?
So is it kind of, when we're talking about equanimity, is it kind of like letting go of things after we've felt those things?
Yes. I, as a meditation teacher, I tend to prefer the language of letting be and kind of trusting that they will follow their own course, that we don't actively have to let them go. Because again, that can subtly become aversion. And, when we tell ourselves, let go, it doesn't work. It's like, go to sleep, go to sleep, go to
Yeah.
sleep. It doesn't work as a command for most
Right.
people.
Yeah.
How do I do that? But let be, okay, that makes a little more sense. Like, if I can trust that the nature of emotions is to rise and pass, I can let it be. I don't have to add on letting go, which involves aversion again and trying to control the outcome. So I'm going to have more strength if I kind of trust the process than if I'm trying to micromanage it.
That's good. I love that. So, how do we practice equanimity when someone hurts us so we can acknowledge harm and keep boundaries without losing ourselves in anger or collapse?
That's another really big question.
Sorry.
No, it's great. It's great. I love the question. It's an important question, and I think it's alive for so many of us. It's part of being human. Um, so I have a couple of answers. I think, first of all, for questions like this, it's important not to have one formulaic, one size fits all, that different moments, different situations, different people call for different strategies. And
Yes.
so some wisdom needs to be, it's great to have several different ways of working for each of us, and to have some kindness and wisdom about maybe trying something and it doesn't feel right, and not, it's not so much that the practice is the answer. It's what's right on the inside. So, given those caveats, I would say there are several possibilities. The first is just what we talked about, riding the wave of the anger, having the courage to feel anger. It's very uncomfortable. And sometimes when we stay with it, it falls away and more vulnerable feelings surface that are even more threatening, like rejection or shame or hurt, or fear of rejection or other things that are the anger sits on top of. I certainly noticed that for myself and feeling those and riding those waves. So that's one way, is to really be equanimous and mindful as you ride the waves of the feelings themselves. And I would say one of the best ways to do that is to drop down into the body, because being in the story tends to keep it going. We all have brilliant lawyers in our minds. We make our case. We have the judge and the jury. Our case is irrefutable most of the time. And even though we always win in the courtroom of our minds, we need to win over and over again, endlessly make our case. And so dropping down into the body tends to be a more effective way to find really the raw emotions, to be with them. From the perspective of equanimity, a cognitive approach that I find extremely helpful, and I do practice this myself when I remember and, when it's accessible to me, is to just reflect on how most experience is much less personal than I make it. And in the case of another person, very often we don't have all the information and we're making things up.
Right.
Their motives, how they feel about us, what was going on with them. Maybe we are able to have a conversation, usually not till, things settle down a little bit. But in the meantime, we're making things up a lot. And I used to joke with my students, if you're going to make it up anyway, make up a different story. Like, they had a really bad day and it's not about you. And that explanation actually works a lot more than people think in terms of what's actually true. We make so many things personal that aren't personal.
Yes.
And we forget how impersonal most of life is. We are the center of the world, and it all appears to revolve around us and point to us and relate to us and be about us. It actually isn't.
Yeah.
And,
It's so true.
It can be liberating. It's a little bit, kind of like, oh, really? It really isn't all about me, So it can be a little disappointing, but also very liberating.
Very liberating. Yeah. That's a really good lesson for people to remember, that it's not all about them all the time, that there's always another story going on with other
In
people.
fact, most of the time, it's the impersonal elements are much more responsible than the personal elements for creating moments of experience. There are so many impersonal elements that come together in any moment of experience that are impacting the other person and me.
Yeah. And once you recognize that, there's sort of like a freedom that you can have with your mind, because you're not caught up with the story.
Yes, exactly. So in that case, There's a classic story that I love. I don't know if it's from Zen Buddhism. I can't remember exactly, but you may have heard it. Your listeners may have heard it. But, you're in a boat, you're in a harbor, trying to get out of a harbor, and you have the right of way, and another boat comes at you, and you have the right of way, but it's not giving way. It's not yielding to you. And you're getting angrier and angrier, and the boat's coming closer and closer and closer, and it's going to crash into you. And you have the right of way. And at some point, the boat is close enough, and you see there's nobody in the boat. And your anger just, it's gone, vanishes when there's nobody in the boat. So it's an interesting exercise at times to kind of reflect on this. And then, of course, you don't need to ride the anger because it just collapses. Very often, when
Yeah.
there's nobody to blame,
Right.
there's no anger. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really good analogy. And it's important to remember that there really is no need to get angry because, it doesn't really help anyone to get angry.
Yeah, I mean, anger arises and anger has information, and we don't need to demonize anger. Anger arises around, perceived boundary violations and things like that. But there are plenty of moments when anger is triggered by something totally impersonal
Yeah.
and, a kind of misinterpretation of reality.
Yes.
Yeah.
So then there's the larger world we're living in right now. Many people feel overwhelmed by the news, uncertainty, everything happening all at once. I mean, it's just endless. You write that equanimity is the ability to stay solid within yourself even when the world is raging. How do we begin to cultivate that kind of steadiness while remaining compassionate and engaged?
Yes. Well, I would say if we don't remain compassionate and engaged, it's not equanimity. And one of the things that I talk about in the book is how indifference and detachment are near enemies of equanimity. So we often mistake them for equanimity, but they are not. So the moment we notice that we no longer care, then we've moved away from equanimity to something else. So how do we stay with equanimity when our nervous system, our emotions are being hijacked more and more and more by the news? Well, lots of answers to that question. Again, no one size fits all. I talked about this on another podcast yesterday, actually. Certainly, titration counts. It's important, it's wise, it's skillful. So how much do we expose ourselves to material, stimuli that provokes us? I mean, that's kind of pretty basic.
Yeah.
And, before we talk about an equanimous response, there are ways that we can monitor our exposure to provocative stimuli. And that is a very important kind of first pass, I think, for most of us in terms of the news cycle and all sorts of things. And, how much are you asking of your nervous system? Because if you're kind of exposing it constantly to an onslaught of stimulation and then asking for equanimity, that's not a reasonable expectation. So I think it needs to be a multi-pronged approach. So titrating our exposure to provocative stimuli is, in many cases, the first pass. And then, we can practice things like, watching whatever news we watch, whether it's, recently watching an ICE agent murder someone in Minneapolis, that is very provocative stimulation for many of us. When we do see it, can we be with what we're feeling and not shut down? Can we allow that emotion to rise, pass, and another one, and another one? And maybe going through them, what we're feeling, is heartbreak, just heartbreak.
Yes.
Be equanimous with that too. Equanimity can hold heartbreak, and in terms of all the major traditions, and circling back to your early question about why do I think they value equanimity? Certainly the great sages in all of these traditions, they cared. They never stopped caring. They cared about the world. They opened their hearts to the 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows of the world with greater and greater spaciousness. If you think about, Kuan Yin, the Buddha, Jesus Christ, Gandhi, all the great inspiring leaders, they were equanimous. They cared in a very balanced way without not caring. They turned towards suffering. They didn't avoid it. They didn't avoid it. They allowed themselves to feel it. And for that heartbreak to rather, with equanimity, rather than turning into cynicism, despair, or complete overwhelm, equanimity allows it to turn into effective engagement, to inspire effective engagement. Given that my heart is breaking, with wisdom, what is mine to do? I don't have much agency in Minnesota or Washington, D.C. What is mine to do in this world as it is right now? I can only find that with equanimity. I want to feel touched by the world. It inspires me to engage and to figure out what is mine to do in this world as it is right now.
Yeah. And then having the, I guess, inner wisdom to know when you've done what you can to stop, because you're not going to be able to solve everything yourself. But if you do some things that you can do with equanimity, then you've done something, and you have to recognize that you've done something, but you can't sort of keep thinking, what more can I do, or drive yourself crazy by thinking, I haven't done enough.
Absolutely. And I talk about this in Quiet Strength also, that, I think the Serenity Prayer from the 12-step program is a beautiful practice of equanimity, recognizing what I can and can't control. And it's an expression of wisdom. Equanimity takes in the big picture. Given all of these circumstances, what can I do? What can I not do? And to be at peace with what I can do and what I can't do. And while we're caught up in despair and this feeling that I can never do enough, the sad irony is that we do nothing.
Yeah.
We become paralyzed by that.
Yes, if we allow ourselves to.
Yes, and disengage.
Yeah.
It happens very often. It's too big a problem and I can't do anything. So I'm going to disengage because it's overwhelming. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that some people just don't have the capacity to engage in a way that is important. Just some people just can't. But I wish that more people would feel that they can do something in the situation that we're in today with equanimity.
I agree. And I think it's important too. In Quiet Strength, I give the example of Mr. Paul, a story my editor told me that I thought was so beautiful that stuck with him his whole life. Mr. Paul was someone Barry worked with as a teenager. He owned a clothing store, a tailor shop. And what he did was engage with people with quiet dignity. And that quiet dignity contributed a huge amount. So it's important for us also to recognize that even a moment of non-reactivity is contributing. It doesn't have to be volunteer work or, going out and feeding people, or it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be political engagement. It can be how you relate to your neighbor.
Right. Or
So
even
that,
or even something as simple as smiling at somebody.
absolutely,
Yeah, it all adds up and makes a difference.
absolutely. It all contributes in whatever way to the world that we want to live in, that we can contribute to that in a myriad of ways.
Yeah. And if it's okay, I'd like to end with something experiential. Would you be open to guiding listeners through a short equanimity meditation, something gentle to cultivate steadiness and peace in the world that we're living in today?
I'd be delighted to do that.
Thank you.
I'd be delighted. So, for this brief meditation, feel free to close your eyes or lower your gaze. It's not necessary, but sometimes it's helpful, whatever feels comfortable to you. And to just settle into your posture, nothing special, comfortable, relaxed. And take a couple of deep diaphragmatic breaths. Inhaling through the nostrils and filling up the whole torso with the in-breath from the belly up to the collarbones. And taking a nice, slow out-breath, emptying all of the air from the torso. And repeating this for 2 slow, luxurious in-breaths and out-breaths. And after the third out-breath, release any control of the breath. Let it find its own natural rhythm. And feel the body sitting here with whatever is going on with you. Not trying to change anything. And when you're ready, bring to mind the image or the felt sense of a loved one. Someone who naturally brings a smile as you think of them. In this case, it's helpful to have it be a human, other meditations we can bring to mind pets, but in this one, bringing to mind a human being. And of course, in every human relationship, there's conflict, there's difficulties. So see if you can hold the fullness of your relationship with them in your heart for a moment. And reflect on the following phrase. See if this feels true to you. Your happiness and unhappiness are more a function of your thoughts and your deeds and your circumstances than of my wishes for you. Your happiness and unhappiness are more a function of your own thoughts, your own actions, and your own circumstances than of my wishes for you. Appreciating the fundamental truth of this, I will never stop wishing for your happiness. In spite of the limits of my control, may you be happy, and may you find the deepest and truest sources of your own happiness. May you flourish. May you find peace and ease within your own heart. And may I find the spaciousness in my own heart to trust your journey, how your life unfolds. And finally, just to extend this wish beyond our loved ones to our families, our friends, our communities here in the US and around the world, feeling so assaulted, so many people. May we find the true sources of peace and happiness within our own hearts. May we support and love one another in a way that allows them to do this. And then coming back to the simplicity of the breath in this last moment. Meeting your own experience gently as you open your eyes.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much, Margaret. I think everyone needed to hear that meditation today. It's funny when you said to picture one person, I had a hard time picturing just one person because there are so many people that I love in my life who I wish that for. And I wish that we could all have peace in the world, that everybody could feel that way about everybody else.
Indeed. Yes. Yes.
So, just briefly, in closing the interview, just briefly for listeners who want to explore your work further, when will your book be published and where can people find it?
My book will be published March 10th. It's available for pre-sale everywhere books are sold. I will be doing some book launches in California and Colorado. And please go to my website, margaretcullen.com. I have a newsletter. There are practices, free practices on the website. Mindfulness, compassion, forgiveness, equanimity.
I'll
And
make sure to list those on in the show notes. So anybody who's listening who wants to explore Margaret's work further, please look for the link in the show notes.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate the interview today, and I'm looking forward to your book coming out.
Wonderful.
And I'm hoping that all the people who have been listening today and who listen to me will start practicing equanimity along with their mindfulness practice and their sleep routines.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you so much.
Best of luck with your book.
I appreciate it.
And take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.